one of the biggest things right now about visibility that I think is so powerful, because I think there's so many people that are like, oh, that's a nice to have, is change requires influence and it requires audience usually. And so the more that business owners can be visible and be credible when they do speak up about something that is political or human, people listen in a different way.
Welcome to Carrie On, the show where we explore reinvention, self-discovery, and empowerment before, during, and after midlife. I'm your host, Carrie Murray. It's time to keep our head above the chaos and carry on. Visibility isn't vanity, it's access. Access to rooms, access to capital, access to influence. For decades, women were told to wait their turn, collect more credentials, be more likable, and smile more. Right, Caitlin Collins? We've been coached to soften our voices, qualify our expertise, and make everyone feel comfortable before we take up space. Not anymore. Today, I'm joined by Rebecca Cafiero, founder of the Pitch Club and creator of PitchWell. It's an AI platform built to democratize access to visibility. She's a journalism-trained entrepreneur who has helped thousands, including myself, of women earn meaningful media without expensive PR and agencies and all those gatekeepers. And today we're talking about why women are done asking permission for access. Welcome, Rebecca.
Oh, thank you. I'm so honored to be here. And you're already going to make me emotional. I know we're going to, as typical Enneagram 7s, probably cry, laugh, and have a great time.
Absolutely. I first want to talk about how I met you,
Yes.
And what that has led. So just remember, anyone out there who's just like, I don't know if I should go to that. I don't know. You never know who you're going to meet. So our good friend Bernadette, who's back there, say hi, Bernadette.
Hi.
She's our fabulous producer. And look at you guys, new studio mics. Thanks to Bernadette. She mentioned to me the Pitch Club. And it was a conference, a 2.5-day conference. She was like, I'm working. You got to meet Rebecca. You guys have so much in common. You guys are community builders, connectors. And I was like, cool. I love pitching. I love hearing about money and new ideas and wondering what new businesses or services they're going to be pitching. And maybe as an investor, I'll find someone who needs a new investor. So I go, and it's first off beautifully branded, and then I was like, oh, not pitching, but pitching to media, and not pitching like baseball. So it's like a triple meaning. And I quickly immersed myself and pivoted to be like, okay, I'm not here as an investor. I'm here as Carrie, the entrepreneur. And it was at that Pitch Club I met Tracy O'Malley.
Oh, my best friend.
Yes. She gave a wonderful, wonderful just presentation about the Enneagram. As a 7, Rebecca is also a 7, and she's been on the show. So after you watch this one, please go back and watch Tracy O'Malley's episode. Then I joined your inner circle, which was a wonderful mastermind that's a year long. And I met Angie Peacock. Go back and watch that episode after you watch this one.
Also an Enneagram 7.
Also an Enneagram 7. And so it just kind of shows the daisy chain of who you meet and who that can lead to. Have you always been like that? Have you, as a kid growing up, knew someone who knew someone, or I know somebody you can meet?
Oh, it's such a good question. And so I think growing up, actually, I felt lonely very often. I didn't feel like I belonged. I was a total bookworm. And I could not wait to leave the small town I was in. And I mean, there were some good things about it. I think I needed to be there, probably with a soul contract, so that I could experience contrast of what I wanted. But I didn't feel like I belonged. I didn't feel a sense of community. I didn't feel a connection. And I always craved that, but I didn't find it. And so I think I realized probably in my 20s, I was like, if you can't find something, you have to create it yourself. And I need to stop waiting for someone else to provide it. And
that's really phenomenal at the age of 20 to have that kind of wherewithal.
Well, it wasn't always that easy. I mean, I think I had it. It didn't mean it materialized.
Yeah.
And even in work situations, I've always been very generous, very anti-gatekeeping. I was in sales. Remember, we were in what they call it, a pavilion, but basically 10 salespeople. And I would share everything that was working. I was the top salesperson, and people would say I could hear the whispers. What is she doing? They assumed I was cheating in some way. And I'm like, here's the emails I'm sending. Here's the things I'm doing. Here's the ideas. I was new and fresh, and everything was possible. And people were like, why are you sharing this? And I'm like, because we're not competing. And so I have always looked for community, but I didn't find it when I was in corporate. I mean, you find people you connect with, but I never liked the like kissing up. And that's probably the 8 in me that is like the challenger that's going, no. I always cared about like the people that were on the same level as me and the people that were below me as far as like people that reported to me. I wanted to make sure they were taken care of. And so I didn't like to play the game in corporate at all. And I would say I started finding community when I became an entrepreneur. And what I realized is there's other people that think differently. There's other people that understand collaboration and, you know, want to design their own life. And I know that's a very overused term, you know, but 10 years ago, this idea of like, you can design whatever you want to experience was new. So as to your question, by the way, I don't know if you noticed, I'm wearing a Queen Bee shirt. This is in your honor.
I love that.
And not that, like, I think you and I are similar. Like, we don't have an interest in being on a pedestal, but we are about like, how do you build a community? How do you build the hive? How does everyone have like a purpose and a role? And so I didn't build my first community, I think 2016.
Okay.
And it was actually kind of like a home for people that I felt like didn't have a community. It was like, everyone is welcome here. But Tracy O'Malley, you know, I'd known her since 2016. And in 2020, I had my Enneagram read. And on that time, I was an exact half 3 and half 7. This was not the test she uses now. And she's like, but I know you and you're a 7. And she's like, this is what a 7 is. And she said a 7 is a community creator. A 7 is all about freedom and fun and uncertainty and intensity. And I felt so seen, but it also gave me a ton of permission to start showing up that way. Instead of the 3 version, which pursued validation when I knew I wasn't actually in alignment, but I would like keep selling myself the idea that, well, if I just go achieve this thing or this thing, like it would give me a little bit of happiness. And I got off that train.
Yeah.
And it was when I shut down my existing business and opened the Pitch Club.
Love that. So you started, I mean, you don't just all of a sudden start with, hey, Luna came to say hi.
Hey. Oh, I used to have a cat named Luna.
Yeah, so she's just gonna, you know, do her thing. Before we jump back in, quick story. For 10 years, my company was called BRA Network, Business Relationship Alliance. Support was literally my brand. So when I tell you I'm picky about bras, I mean it. And I'm obsessed with Handful. It lifts without wires, flatters without flattening, and feels good all day, not just for those 30-second Instagram posts. I wear it to yoga, I wear it to filming, I wear it when I need to feel pulled together but comfortable. It's the kind of support that doesn't squeeze you into somebody else's shape. Use code Carrie On at handful.com. Support and make it intentional. Now back to the show. Well, we had to remove the cat. She felt our witchy vibe. So she was like, I want to join this conversation, ladies. But I was going with, in journalism, there's a lot of inequity. And I'm sure you've experienced a lot of things that just were kind of like, oh, cool. Would this happen to a man? Everything from sexual harassment, competition, being judged because you're a woman right when you've walked in the room. Tell me, was there a moment when you're like, I'm done, I'm fed up, I've got to change this? Yeah, there was a few, and you know, I had always loved storytelling. Like for me, journalism, I would have never left that had I not seen the ugly side. And unfortunately, I saw that at 19, 20. I think I worked at the paper until I was 21. I got hired my sophomore year of college, but before that, in high school, I actually worked for a college paper. And so as a senior, I wrote a story that won like the Human Interest Award for newspapers in Oregon. And then when I was in college, the paper I worked for was actually our college paper, but it was one of the top college papers in the nation. And we would regularly get picked up by the Associated Press, the College Wire. Oh, wow.
We had it was a 6-day-a-week paper with a circulation of 70,000.
Wow.
Which was pretty amazing. And a multi-million-dollar ad budget, and we had a staff of 70. So it was an institution, and I loved the first 2 years because, especially as a 7, what journalism gave me was novelty, right? Like every week I'm writing 2 new stories and I'm getting to be like this mini expert. I mean, I interviewed the chef of the Grateful Dead who started the Oregon Country Fair, which is one of the biggest like alternative festivals. And, you know, I was writing on current events. I was at a city hall meeting where a woman came in, because in Eugene, Oregon, it's legal to be naked as long as you're not trying to arouse yourself or others, but came in naked into a meeting. And it wasn't until she kind of went after the mayor with a large staff that they were like, this might not be okay. So I loved it because I was getting to see all these perspectives, you know, living in Eugene, Oregon, a very liberal town, because I'd grown up in a very conservative, small, blue-collar community. And then the couple of events that really showed me, I'd say, the darker side of journalism. So one was I covered the WTO riots in, was it 99 or 2000. And, seeing peaceful protests, I saw the footage that mainstream media put in versus what the independent journalism put in, or I should say what, at the time it was camcorders, the independent media. And then I was actually on the street covering it and was threatened to be arrested by when they brought in the National Guard. And I was like, oh, wow. And it was really like, the truth isn't necessarily always what gets put out there. And of course, we're not even talking politics. We're just saying there is always a narrative.
A spin.
There's a spin. And then after that, so that made me like pretty disappointed. Then the next thing was, at the time I was 20 when I was associate editor at the paper, and my editor at the time, who was a 40-year-old man, we became good friends. And of course, I was 20, so I thought it was okay that men and women could be friends. And my editor told me he wanted to date me. He brought me in his office, shut the door, said, I am interested in dating you. And I was like, I thought I was safe because that's not appropriate in a workplace. I didn't want to tell him, oh, I'm not actually interested in you.
Right.
And also you're literally my dad's age.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I said, well, you're my boss. And he said, I don't have a problem with that.
Wow.
And I just said, I'm not interested. I'm sorry. And it was really amazing. I mean, I'd been kind of one of the golden children at the newspaper for the 2 years I'd been there, and things turned like on a dime. And at that time I'd worked a story for months and months. It started with a column on the local police, which I did a ride along. It was fascinating. And the local cop, who was just a treasure, had had a comment to me that just like, my spidey senses went off. And so I started investigating the local campus police. And long story short, microfilms and this is like before Google, right? 1999, 2000. It turned out that I ended up writing a story on it when I finally, after 3 months, got someone from Oregon Department of Transportation to go on the record about abuse of power in this institution. And then I started getting tips in. So we were, I think, on story number 3. They were all my bylines, but after the first story, and when they realized this is actually going to like people are going to be fired, investigations are going to happen. I had done a interview with the head of campus police. They thought it was one thing when I went in, and I finally got them on record, and then I got kicked out of their office. And I was like, that was journalism to me. I was like, this is amazing. And then after that third story, which again, nothing was going wrong, all of a sudden I got pulled from the main story and I got put into a supporting role. And they're like, oh, you don't have the experience to take this all the way. And that story ended up being News Story of the Year in the state of Oregon. It ended up being a 7-part series. Like TV covered it.
Wow.
The campus, the University of Oregon did an investigation and laid off 6 people based on it. And it was violations against student rights. Like it was a big deal.
Yeah.
There was a very uncomfortable moment where the sergeant in charge who was being investigated after this interview, where I had very much, what's the word? Like very much surprised her because she thought it was
About
one thing.
Something
it
else.
was, it was not. I was covering a story for the ROTC of their training, and I got to get picked up in a Blackhawk on the lawn of the campus. And I'm sitting there strapped in, and all of a sudden she gets in, and we're strapped in across from each other while there's an active investigation, while I'm 4 stories deep, and I'm like, then we got to paintball against each other, and I absolutely went after it. No. But what that showed me is 2 things. It showed me the politics inside of a publication. It showed me also that media has a slant. And then the third thing that happened is I had another investigative story that was, I don't remember what it was about, but it was like another meaty one, and it never even got published because it exposed one of our major advertisers. And I was like, oh, and again, I was 21 years old, and I was willing to have the bartending job to actually pay for the journalism habit long term. I wanted to move to LA or somewhere and do this, but I saw all these other things, and I was I'm still an idealist, just to have a little more experience now, but yeah, my heart was broken, and I said, maybe this isn't for me. And that's when I decided maybe I'll go into law instead. Yeah.
And bringing your expertise from journalism, and you saw the inequities of not only access, but now, you're worried about your job because you don't want to date your boss, right. All of that. I
actually ended up getting fired.
Oh, you did?
And it was the only job I've ever been fired from.
Well, I was going like, how did you leave that job?
To be fair, my performance absolutely declined, right?
Yeah.
And so, there were a few deadlines that I was a little bit late on. And were they fireable offenses? I know because I had been an editor that other people had done those things. And I think that the hammer came down a lot faster for me. But also, anyone who's ever dealt with sexual harassment in a workplace, it puts you into a totally different mindset, and it does not foster your best work.
Yeah.
And, it doesn't create a safe space. I didn't want to be in the office. So
Yeah. So women, let's just pause and like recognize that if you are a woman experiencing any kind of harassment, please don't sit in silence, right, ladies?
No.
Like, please, like, make your voice be heard. Stand up for yourself. Get comfortable with being uncomfortable, and advocate for yourself.
because you are not the only one.
No, absolutely
And
not.
somebody has to speak up. We can't wait for someone else to create the change that we want in the world.
Yeah. Well, you've created change because you created a way for entrepreneurs, especially women entrepreneurs, founders, to get their own visibility and create an entire platform and AI, and then fast forward to that. We'll get to that. Where women can be seen and where they can flourish safely. What sparked the idea for Pitch Club and Inner Circle? Where did you think, okay, I'm done with law, I'm done with journalism, I'm gonna do myself?
Well, so I ended up deciding not to go into law, partly because I thought it was too much paperwork. I went into real estate and became a broker, and then I was like, there's just as much paperwork.
A lot of paperwork in
but a
real
lot less
estate.
student debt. So I had a 13-year career, and I worked for Fortune 500s. I worked for a Fortune 150. I went up the ladder, VP of sales and marketing. And that was during the dog years, and I was in Vegas for 5 years. The dog years of real estate were 2003 to 2010.
Yeah.
I was in that field from 2002 to 2014.
Wow, so you saw the crash.
Oh.
Did you anticipate that?
I didn't know it. I didn't know. I was like 4 years into my job, and I was like, this is amazing. I'm making
Everybody buy a house.
close to $500,000 a year as a 20-something year old, from a small town with a single mom who qualified for welfare. Like, I had no idea. I didn't know what cycles looked like. And I sold until no one sold. I just kept selling. But I left that for a few reasons. I think one is I also saw that it was working for publicly traded companies. Sometimes it's ready, aim, or ready, fire, aim. And I just got to a point where I was so frustrated. And we actually had a woman CEO who I still like very much respect. But I was watching some of the inequities of pay, and not actually female. It wasn't related to gender. It was related to location. I was the broker for California. And I'm like, wait a second. We're targeting our California employees at 110,000. By the way, these people work weekends, every single weekend,
Yes.
right? And Texas and Florida are making 250 to 300, and they have no state income tax. And I saw that inequity, and I was like, as a leader, I was like, I am not okay giving a initiative or this is not fair.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, and I also kept hearing, oh, we're making the highest margins in the company. And I'm like, yeah, but you're doing it off of the backs of people who are not paying fairly, but you're betting on the fact they won't leave.
Correct.
And so I just had a huge issue with that. And I also I wanted to have kids, and I didn't want, to go back
Be
to work.
working on the weekends.
Well, go back to, and I had, my friends that had kids were pumping on conference calls, and I was like, I don't want to do that. So, so I left. And so back to your question of Pitch Club, I was about 3 years into coaching, and I was kind of doing a hybrid of like business with a little bit of life coaching, because I love like productivity and personal development. And I'd reached a plateau, and I was like, what can I do to grow my business? And at this time we were trying to get pregnant with our second. So my son was a baby. And I was like, I need to make more money, but work less. And so I was like, well, maybe if I get some PR. Like, I'd never done PR. I'd never studied PR. I mean, I was straight up journalism. But I understood what the other side of it looked like.
Right.
And I said, maybe I get some PR that'll differentiate me. It'll bring in, better clients. I can, raise my rates. Exactly, yeah. And so I went out and I interviewed 3 PR agencies that were actually all referred to me by other people I knew. And I would ask them questions related to sales, and it was like blank looks. They're like, wait, what? Because I said, well, how can you show me that this, visibility or a placement or whatever, how is it going to either differentiate me and lead to higher rates? How is it going to lead to lead generation or consultations or conversion? And they're like, well, just visibility is good. You'll get followers. I'm like,
Right.
I'm asking KPI questions.
Yeah.
And so I said, well, there's no way I'm investing $30,000 if they can't.
I can get more followers.
Yeah. And so I said, and I had a friend who was in PR for fashion. So she was like a director at Rockbox and ThreadUp. And I took her out for a mani-pedi, and I was like, hey, let me ask you a couple questions. Well, I'll pay for your manicure. She's like, okay, best investment I've ever made. And she just gave me just a couple of tips. And I was like, I'll just figure this out. Like, I understood the journalist side. I knew what made for good content. And that first year of like very much failing forward, I got 20 publications that either, from a 1-sentence feature all the way up to a full like 2 or 3 page article. And then I started doing podcasting. And I was kind of doing it just because I was like, number one, it's fun. It differentiates me. And it was all working.
Yeah.
And then I started having my clients say, how are you getting this visibility? And I'm like, and I'm, you know me, I'm not a gatekeeper, but
Right.
I also was like, well, it's a hot mess behind here. Like, it's working, but I don't really have a system. Like, I wasn't ready to teach anybody. And one of my clients at the time was my old vice president, like national vice president of sales and marketing from the builder that I had left. And she's like, come on, just show me. And I was like, okay, but man, I now have to organize everything. Like, it's all in my head. And I kind of walked her through the basics. And within 90 days, she had an interview in Forbes. She was on the Today Show. She got 5 speaking gigs, like all these opportunities. And she was getting better results than I was because she wasn't doing it haphazard. She was like taking everything I told her and making it a process. And within 6 months, it was like the results just kept amplifying. So I started teaching it and kind of DIYing it with clients. And then by 2020, I'd been in a few masterminds. And I was like, everyone that wants these results wants it not just because, some people probably want it egoically, but they want it because they want to use this as a marketing channel. They want to grow their business. They want to grow their credibility. They want to grow their impact. And I looked at the masterminds I was in, and, yes, you were connected with people and the retreats were a great experience, but I looked at it and I was like, there's no specific deliverables.
And
yes.
so I've been in classes like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so I'm like, I want to make sure that like people walk away with something so specific that the value of what their investment was is never questioned. Because that's one of the things I would hear from masterminds I was in is like, wasn't worth it. Wasn't worth the money, right? And I do, by the way, firmly believe like I always got out what I put in, but it's also because you can't just like pay for it. You have to show up. You have to put in the energy. You have to invest in the other relationships. So when I launched my first mastermind was in 2020, and it was like, it was virtual, so it was less. There was no retreats, but I was like, okay, you're going to become a best-selling author because I published my own book. So I was like, we can do a collaborative book. And I'm like, you're going to have PR done, and they'll have like their kind of PR kit. And there was we're going to do a virtual summit. So you have your first speaking piece, and you got an interview on my podcast. So just some, it wasn't like a lot, but it was enough that once they dipped their toe in, they could do it on their own. And that, we did 7 rounds.
It must have felt good.
It felt so good. And we had a lot of people returned. My friend I'm staying with right now, like she was in that very first mastermind, and it's really cool, like to see now her brand is, $500,000. She's got a lot of followers and she's in tons of publications, but like it all started there.
Yeah. And you're just kind of like, they kind of, it's like you give them the first domino and then it just kind of propels from there. I'll tell you what, there's no better feeling that when you're a teacher or a coach and you see your students succeed,
yes,
or your clients, and you're just like, to me, I got paid. Like,
yes.
When I would see bra members and they would like collaborate and they're like, oh my gosh, now they're doing these huge collaborations, making all of this money. I felt like I got a paycheck.
Yes.
And even when I was a teacher and I'm teaching fractions and they would do it, I'd be like, oh, good job, Gabriel. Yay. So it's almost like a high, right?
It's a total high. It's a total, is serotonin, dopamine? I don't know, but it's good. And the other thing, and while I've never been like officially a teacher, I think the thing for me that's so rewarding, and even like Bernadette just sent me photos, when I say like Pitch Club in the wild, when people get together, and some of them it's years after they were in one of my programs or masterminds, and they're taking a photo because they're like on a trip or they're doing a collaboration with someone that they met through the Pitch Club community. I'm like, and they send it to me. It just makes me feel so good because I always say, like, I love most people. If someone's open, positive, generous, collaborative, like we're going to get along, but I don't have the time in my life to develop the depth of relationships with every single one of them. But I feel like if I can connect people, then like that's fuel for me. And the other thing, and back to the gatekeeping, is I knew I never wanted to make the deliverables. Like, yes, the mastermind or the group programs, they always had specific deliverables, but I didn't want the results to stop when they left. And I think there's a lot of mentors that will tie results to like the moment you stop paying. Same thing with agencies, right? You'll get this, but once you stop paying, it ends.
It's the faucet turns off.
And I wanted to make sure that I wasn't just giving someone a result, but I was giving them a system that they could replicate on their own.
Yeah, and that's actually a sign of a good teacher, is something that they can now do on their own. It's like you put the scaffolding around them, and now you've taken it off, and they're growing and growing.
Exactly.
Why do you think access to visibility is so important now? And when you were first developing it, why is that important to women and any marginalized person?
Well, visibility is permission, right? And it's people seeing people that look or sound or have experienced something similar to them. It's very hard as humans, I mean, and definitely I think as women, to dream up a possibility that you've never seen experienced in the world. And it's so important for different perspectives. You know, we talk about like echo chambers and especially right now, as divisive as it is, the reality is like we hear, I think that, you know, we hear one perspective over here, we hear another perspective over here. There's actually a lot of people in the middle that are still very open. But I think it's important because how are we going to learn? How can we, if we don't learn better, we can't do better. And we can't learn better if we don't understand the perspectives of people that don't look like us, that are not from, you know, the same type of background as us. And for me, that kind of came into effect. I mean, I grew up in a high school with 1,400 kids, and we had 4 students of color.
Wow.
It was beyond white. The one African-American girl was a good friend of mine. We were on the cheerleading squad together. We had 2 Asian kids that were brother and sister, and I had one friend that was Hispanic. And I'm like, that is not normal. So I was always so curious. I'm like, I want to understand perspectives. And I just visibility for so long was gatekept by white men, right? And or women that played in a masculine world, and people that could afford it. And if you look at who can afford a $5,000 to $10,000 PR retainer, right? It's a couple things. It's either someone that has an existing successful business, which means that they were successful in a world that is built for
them,
yes. Right?
What a shock!
Exactly. I tell my husband all the time, I'm like, like many Instagram memes right now, it's like, I don't understand why you're not angrier. Yeah. And I was like, oh, well, of course, because, you know, I'm like, and my husband is very much a progressive and, you know, very open-minded and grew up in Silicon Valley, a very diverse place. But I'm like, because it doesn't make you mad if the system has always worked for you.
No.
And, you know, and listen, we're still white women with resources and with privilege. And, but I think that we've experienced just as women, when you know what it's like to be discriminated against, you know what it's like to not feel safe, like it's easier to connect, even if someone's story is vastly different, with what it feels like to have been kept small.
Yeah.
And so I don't want people to be kept small.
No.
Everyone deserves to be heard. And in fact, it's probably, I mean, I don't know, not to your audience, this isn't going to be a controversial topic, but, you know, I am very much for affirmative action, and I am very much for, like, there does need to be, I don't want to say a comeuppance, but people do need to be hearing and reading and actually investing their time to learn something different. I'm listening to Malcolm X's autobiography right now. Like I'm trying to finish my 4 books for Black History Month. But it is important. And it's not just important to say, oh, I'm an ally, or like, oh, I'm not racist. It's like, no, like actually being anti-racist. Like you can't really have an understanding unless you've educated yourself. And one of the best ways to educate yourself is to feel the energy of someone and to hear their story, because stories connect us and stories emotionally anchor us. It's not just the facts. So
it's so true. Dear white women, you know, pick up a book. There's a great one out.
Audibles are good too.
Yeah, exactly. About white supremacy is all around us, and there's a whole. It's by Dr. Akila Kadei, and I highly recommend it. But it does talk about the place of the white woman and the privilege that we have when it comes to being heard. If we're in a room full of Black, white, Asian women, the white woman and the men are going to look to her,
right?
You know, and it's up to that white woman to create access to everyone in that room. It is very much our responsibility. Bringing it back now to access to, I told you we can go all over the place about those gatekeepers, and you created Pitch Club to remove all the gates. You taught them how to advocate for themselves, show up in press, show up, and you've also given them the unique opportunity to step on stages and everything, which I think is amazing. From there, you said, you know what, I'm going to take it even a little further. And what made you go, how about I make an entire AI platform out of this?
I would love to say I was so strategic and like I knew this 10 years ago, but no. I mean, I didn't even know AI would exist. I actually, when I started Pitch Club, I think part of my foundation is like anti-gatekeeper, but I wasn't like, I'm going to take down the PR agencies, because actually we have clients that are PR agencies.
Yeah.
I looked at it as, you know, PR agencies have a purpose, and some of them do really great work and some of them do not.
Some are very effective.
Yeah, some of them are very good, and there's PR agencies that operate in lanes that I have no knowledge experience or interest in. However, most businesses, to be able to spend $60,000 to $120,000 a year on PR, you have to already have a very healthy revenue. You have to typically be at 7 figures. And for me, I was like, oh, this is actually the stepping stone for small businesses. This is a stepping stone for founders who want to go out and fundraise and want the subconscious authority signaling of having momentum from current press or podcasts when they fundraise, right? Which I have seen works because I've worked with a lot of tech founders. And so I didn't go in with like this idea of like, I want to break the masculine institutions and crumble them. It turns out that actually also just kind of was a side effect. It was just giving the opportunity. Like I don't want to ever tell someone you don't get this because you can't do this or you can't afford this. I'm like, no, there's a way. I mean, that's what AI and vibe coding is like. It is dropping the barriers to almost everything. So when I created Pitch Club, it was really, I just want to show people how to do this themselves. And maybe they're doing it until they can get the revenue to pay for PR. I mean, I also have a PR agency. Never intended to, and it was just because clients would say, I love the way that you look at this. I love that, ours is more like, how does this support your goal? We actually reverse engineer the visibility strategy from the business strategy. What's the business goal? And which of these visibility opportunities are going to provide credibility that opens up doors, which are going to actually be visibility that leads to growth or sales, right? And then how do you combine the two for overall profitability? But how PitchWell came about was I had done courses. I had taught, 2-day immersives, like 16 hours of content, and, had in journalists. I mean, Emmy award-winning journalists that, came in and spoke to the communities and all kinds of, amazing people. But I was planning for our sabbatical. So I was actually winding down the Pitch Club. I was not planning to do anything else with it. But I had this, there was 2 things I needed to figure out. And this is, I'll take it back, May of 2025. I was like, I need to figure out 2 things this month. Number 1, where in Italy were we moving? Because we were planning to go in January of 2026. Obviously, we went much earlier. And number 2 is, what do I do with all this content and these courses and these systems and these methods and these templates I've created
modules
over
and all
5
the
years?
things. Yeah.
Because I knew that courses are kind of dying, and
They are,
and
yeah.
it's like, do I want to attempt to and also journalism's changing, so even the courses, while some of the stuff still is valid, the systems within it were changing. And I'm like, but I don't want this to die. And I was also watching almost everyone in the entrepreneurial space that was teaching PR had disappeared. Selena Sue, the Gottliebs, all of a sudden they all pivoted to something else. And I was like, this is interesting. Is this because PR is dying or what? And then of course AI comes in, and AI, yes, it makes PR a bit easier, but you have to understand prompt architecture and PR to actually get it to do anything for you.
Right.
And you still have to go and copy and paste and find context. It made it a little easier, but not materially. So I had 6 hours in the car over 2 days that I was driving back and forth to some events. And I was like, I'm going to figure out what I'm going to do with these courses. And basically I co-created with ChatGPT that I was like, actually, if we could use AI to make this easier, and not just a custom GPT, but I was like, we need to make a visibility dashboard. We need to make an operating system that not only generates good pitches, but actually removes the tension of, oh, I need my Gmail to send a pitch, but I have to go find a media contact. I need to open iTunes. I need to be over here and look at Haro or Quoted or all of these different pieces, because even for someone in PR, that's complicated and takes a lot of time. But I'm like, how can we create something that in 15 minutes a day, the average person that knows nothing about PR, that's just a business owner that wants to be visible, that they can get out there and do something? And that's where the idea of it was born. And so, I spent 6 hours, and then I had a call with, I had a call with her this morning. She's our first advisor, and she's a good friend of mine who has a multiple 8-figure business, and she's just brilliant. And we had a call scheduled. It's like, I want to pitch you an idea. And I've already built the business plan. I mean, in ChatGPT. And I pitched it, and she's like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then I had a morning date, because I was in Palo Alto. My family's in Carmel. I had a morning date with my attorney, Lisa, who is an immigrant, has a background in finance, then became an incredible startup attorney. And we were already hanging out, and I told her, and she's like, oh yeah. And she'd been in the inner circle too, once or twice. And then I third pitched it to my husband, who's also a successful founder. And these are 3 of the smartest, most successful, but also very honest people.
Yes, people that
they were
just,
not going to blow smoke at my rear, and all of them were like, yes. And then I reached out about a week later. I sat on it for a week, which is very unlike me. And Katie, my co-founder, who was running she was doing PR at the agency. She was running basically the agency side of Pitch Club. And I said, I don't want to do this without you. Also want to take a sabbatical and enjoy my life. And I'm also not 26 anymore. So you want to come and like, I don't want to hustle.
Yeah.
Like I will do a lot of action. I'll do aligned action. But so we built it out, and I asked my nephew, who was just doing podcast editing for me, I was like, do you want to try to do some coding? Had no idea how brilliant he was. And he's built the entire platform.
Wow.
21-year-old.
Okay. Now, how many members or users do you have now?
We hit 406 users yesterday.
That's exciting.
I mean, they're not all paid, but we have, I think, 111 paid users. And it's totally bootstrapped. We haven't fundraised yet. And we're not profitable yet. Mm-hmm. I have been bootstrapping, basically Pitch Club is paying for it.
Yeah.
But, and I don't know if we'll fundraise. I'm kind of hoping, since we took on revenue so quickly, that we can continue to scale. But I mean, it's been 7 months, 8 months, and really 4 months since we really launched it. And we have an activation at South by Southwest next month. And we're in talks with some like the biggest business communities out there.
Rebecca, you can call yourself a woman in tech now.
I always say I'm a non-tech founder. I can't write code, but yeah.
That's exciting. That's exciting. So for the entrepreneur, the founder, the speaker, the person who's kind of like, well, I want to get out there, what would you recommend for them?
I mean, this is going to sound self-serving, but go PitchWell. So if you go, we'll give them your code.
Yeah.
So you can go to www.gopitchwell.com, and it's GOPITCH, P like Paul. Mm-hmm. Sometimes that sounds a little different. And then WELL.com, and you can go and you can check out no credit card with a trial to Carrie 7, mm-hmm. So CARRIE and the number 7, and that'll give you a 7-day free trial. You can get a free account anyway, but that'll give them basically a paid account for a week.
Oh, that's great.
For free. And the reason you want the paid account versus the free account, you can do some things, but we have 3.8 million podcasts in our database. As of today that we're recording, 9,000 journalists, but we just finalized our journalist database on the back end. So we'll be adding probably about another 500 to 1,000 journalists a week now. Mm-hmm. And there's about 150,000 we'll add, but we're still working on it not being a little manual. And I mean, we have people that have never in their life done PR, never done a pitch, that have come in and have booked podcasts, have booked publications. But the really cool thing is it's not just about pitching. If you think about it, helps you come up with authority content. And everything that you put into a pitch. So if you have a newsletter that you already put out there, you can have that repurposed into a pitch. And then it personalizes it for a podcast to the host, to looking at their show notes, or it personalizes it to the publication, the journalist, to their beat. So it's like, hey, you wrote about this. Here's another angle that I can provide value on, all using tried and true templates. And then the really cool thing is then it can be repurposed into social media, newsletter, et cetera content, because you upload a writing sample, a non-AI writing sample. Yeah. And that way it actually sounds like your voice. And it has a follow-up system in it. So it's like a one-step system, and it goes through your Google or Gmail or website. Well,
let me give you a great example of what happened for me. So when I was playing around with it just a couple of days ago, and so I'm in my second, I like to call it like my queen age years, as now recently divorced and now launching the show and everything. And so I put in it that, I had a breakup, but it was also a breakthrough. And it pitched me this podcast called My So-Called Midlife, which I thought was such a great title. And in the pitch, it had pulled that podcast had Dr. Sarah Reardon, and my podcast had Dr. Sarah Reardon. And it created a pitch that was like, we both had the same guest on. And I know you got valuable takeaway like I did. And I read that and I was like, oh my gosh, I was really impressed with that and everything. And I sent it away. We'll see. It's only been 2 days. But I
follow up in a few days.
Yeah, exactly. So it works. It definitely.
And it's not just about like a number of like, oh, this is just generating a ChatGPT pitch. It's also that like it's such intelligent pitching. That process is the exact process that our agency side used. And these are PR professionals, but that would take us between an hour and 2 hours to do the research, to write the pitch, to find what, a previous podcast relates, to maybe listen to a little bit of it. So it's really putting like really powerful tools in the hands of business owners. And, when we look at who our 405 as of today users are, I mean, it's from like we did a children's we did a publishing company. We did a workshop for them, and we had 75-year-old children's book authors who are not tech people,
right,
that were able to figure it out and use the platform. And one of them, in the first hour, we onboard them, and she sent 2 pitches, like this 75-year-old woman, all the way over to we're working with a couple of VCs that we're doing education for their cohorts, and they're using the platform. So I mean, it's from very tech people to people with zero tech ability, and I call it the Canva of PR.
Yeah.
It is meant to be simple to use.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing, and like obviously there's like the tech language, but like the woo language I love, and I was sharing this the other day. I was like, when you see a topic that comes out of your brain, but it's just like optimized, it's just super optimized, and you're like, oh, that's like a little perspective I didn't think, and then you get excited about it, and you're excited about the pitch, and you show up on a podcast or wherever you are, like that excitement that it brings in totally changes your energy. And when your energy is attractive, like law of attraction, it's so yes, like it is a tech product, but there's also an energetic component behind it. I always say PR to me is like, it's like Glinda the Good Witch in Dorothy and Wizard of Oz, right? PR, because you get publications or logos or podcasts, it doesn't mean you're a better human. It doesn't mean that you're better at what you do. But especially for women, there is an inherent confidence from the validation of that third party or of that person. Should we need it? No.
right.
But I know that we all kind of feel like, oh, I am an expert, or and that confidence, like, so Glinda told Dorothy, Dorothy, you had the power all along.
Yeah.
But she just didn't know it. And I do feel like there's that kind of permission transfer element of it. And so I want to make it easier for people to get that.
Well, start clicking your heels, ladies.
Exactly.
Apparently, that's all we need to be doing. I love that. It's also, just to wrap it up here, is, right now, the press is under a lot of scrutiny and our First Amendment rights. So I say, get out there, get loud. And even like on Instagram, algorithm are changing because they don't want certain things being said about certain people. Ugh.
Oh man, the algorithm changes real fast if you like, comment, and save a couple of different posts. Wow.
Oh yeah, for sure. So it's also that we all need to stand up for freedom of press, freedom of speech, and perpetuate that. And this is a vehicle to do that. So bravo, Rebecca. It's not an easy thing. I'm excited to see where it just takes off and where it goes. It's only been 7 months, so that's exciting.
It's in 7 months with 3 of that being dev. Really,
Yeah.
I mean,
Wow.
it is exciting. It is moving fast, and I think it's it's aligned, and it's the right time.
Yeah.
It's the right time for this.
I agree. Wow. Well, before we go, tell the people where we can find you, where we can follow you along on this journey.
I mean, physically, I'm in Sicily, which is a whole
incredible.
Yeah,
that's a whole nother podcast.
It's a whole nother podcast, man. I will say I am in a year of my word of the year is consistency, but my experience right now is massive contrast. I am like in between loving. It's like every day I'm like, there's something I love, and I'm like, I'm living in history, and this is incredible, and I'm. In 2 months, I go to my first play at the Roman theater, the Greek theater next to the Roman theater, which is 2,700 years old, to watch the Greek tragedies that were actually written for that stage.
Wow.
Which is wild. And there's days I'm like, oh my God, being back in California, Instacart, DoorDash, ClassPass, it's so amazing. But you can find me on social media at Rebecca Cafiero, and from there I'm linked to PitchWell and my website, RebeccaCafiero.com. And I mean, hopefully in publications and on podcasts everywhere, thanks to PitchWell. Like I'm using it also. I'm actually doing a 30-day visible founder challenge. And every day I am getting on the platform and pitching myself to a few things. And also the other side of pitching is it's not just to media, it's to who can help you.
Yeah.
So, whether that's like, hey, Carrie, let me give you a code for PitchWell, share it with your email list and your audience, but is asking people for help. And, I think as women, we have a hard time doing that. We don't want to rely on someone, or we don't want to be a nuisance. And so I'm also developing that muscle of like, ask for what you want, because I know my purpose is beautiful and pure, and I can't help all the people I want to unless I also ask for help.
Absolutely.
One of the biggest things right now about visibility that I think is so powerful, because I think there's so many people that are like, oh, that's so nice to have, is change requires influence, and it requires audience usually. And so the more that business owners can be visible and be credible when they do speak up about something that is political or human, people listen in a different way.
Truly.
And so that actually, I mean, as much as I was a little bit in a quiet period for a few weeks as I was just taking in and trying to make sense of everything that's happening, I was like, actually, this is the not a time to be silent, because I do have a privilege of having an audience, and it is also a time for me to speak up and let people know where I stand on things. And I've had a lot of people that are like, thank you for just talking about this. And so if people want
because
change,
we notice who's quiet.
and I'm like, okay, week 1, okay, week 2, I'm like, week 3,
Like,
you're
yeah.
complicit. And I do feel if people do want to be able to have conversations, if they do want to create change, like, you need to have a level of visibility and credibility.
Absolutely. To be taken seriously now.
Exactly.
Wow. Thank you so much,
course.
Rebecca. This has been really, really informative and really eye-opening. And I know my audience is going to get a lot from this. Everyone's got to go to PitchWell. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And again, let's fight for our First Amendment rights as people of this country. And please like, comment, subscribe. Let us know what you're excited about and what you want to pitch about. And as always, keep your head above the chaos and carry on. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Carry On. Be sure to find us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And as always, like and subscribe to our channel on YouTube. And don't forget to keep your head above the chaos and carry on.